So that's our next topic. AOC actually kind of becoming a Biden girl.
Like I said, I was not ready for your nonsense. Okay, I'll tell you guys what actually happened. I'm sure a lot of you are confused. This is what actually happened, is that AOC, now the reason why we're even bringing this up is because she is a Bernie Sanders surrogate, and by default, that would make her the most famous politician who's backed Bernie Sanders, I think. I don't think there's a politician more famous than her. So the biggest and most famous politician in America almost endorsed Bernie Sanders, and then 3 or 4 months after she endorsed Bernie Sanders, she comes out and says, well, I'm really just endorsing whoever wins. No, a lot of people have said, here's her actual quote. When you read the quote itself isn't that crazy. I've said throughout this entire process what is so important that we ultimately unite behind who that Democratic nominee is. I think it's a two-way street. I've been concerned by some folks that say if Bernie's the nominee, they won't support him, and the other way around. Now, that's not really anything crazy to say, especially in a late night show, right? I think we support the nominee. I hope people support whoever it is. Now, the reason why this is weird is because she's a Bernie Sanders surrogate. And Bernie Sanders just got clobbered, not clobbered, but he had a bad Super Tuesday. Bernie Sanders really needs people to come out in the polls and vote for him in a couple of days on, I believe it's, again, Tuesday. And we have his famous, most influential surrogate going on TV saying, well, I support really whoever wins. So did you endorse Bernie Sanders or did you endorse whoever wins the ticket? I mean, that's the thing. At this point, it almost sounds like she just kind of endorsed whoever wins, which there's nothing wrong with saying, look, between both these candidates, I honestly just want to win. Whoever it is, we have to unite behind. In general, that's totally reasonable and rational to say. But when you're literally one of the biggest endorsements for one of the two people, it's just weird to say it now. She couldn't say it in 2 weeks when whatever happens, happens. She had to say it now, today, or yesterday. I thought that was very weird.
And to a certain extent, it kind of calls into question what the very definition of the word endorsement means. Because if you can endorse, like she kind of did what Andrew Yang said ranked choice voting should be. You know what I'm saying? She just did the first ranked choice endorsement I think I've ever heard of, where it's like, Bernie Sanders is totally my guy unless he doesn't win. And then Joe Biden's totally my guy. You know what I'm saying? You theoretically could endorse everybody in a party if you were doing that. You know what I'm saying? You literally could say, Bill Weld's my dude unless he doesn't win. Then Ron Paul's my man unless he doesn't win. Then I'm going to vote all in for Donald Trump 2020.
Well, because
exactly.
I mean, but again, it's just exactly the mess. What she said herself wasn't weird at all. It's just the position she's in, and now it's like right now he needs to look. It's very important we get behind Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the answer. Just saying, well, whatever, man. Whoever wins. That's who I'll go with. Now she has history of basically always saying that, and I think it's because a lot of people don't like her for it. I don't think you like her for it. I think it makes her a very remarkably effective politician because she's put herself in a position right now where,
and she's gorgeous.
See, I don't care. I honestly don't care about that. I just think that's effective right there. You look at the way the wind's blowing and say, maybe,
what, being gorgeous or
maybe putting myself in a spot where I can go either way will help. But the other thing I wanted to show from this is that while that story came out, because while that story came out today, and again, we're no Bernie supporters here. I'm not voting for Bernie Sanders. I don't care who you vote for. If you want to vote for him, please do. But I'm just not voting for him. However, I don't care who you support. I don't care if you actually are just like a big, would be a Russophile and you love Russia. This is one of the most bizarre things I've read. Newsweek ran this headline today because in concert with that AOC story got made public, but it was a comment she made in Seth Meyers Tonight that was very tepid that a bunch of people ran as AOC said she'll endorse Biden. It's like, sorta. I agree it looks bad, but it's kind of funny that multiple headlines got read on it.
Well, and before you switch topics, I just want to say,
switching topics.
It did surprise me though, because there's so many ways of avoiding that. Just saying, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Oh, I haven't thought about that. Ask me in a couple of months, Oh,
yeah.
But straight out coming out and saying, I got a second choice already lined up. I got that bullet in the chamber.
That's not what she said, though. She just said, I'll endorse whoever wins, which is what people, by the way, have been saying the whole time. It was the framing. So I want to highlight, because this is... Newsweek ran that same article. I showed you the actual report, so I like actual reporting better, but this is what cracked me up. Newsweek runs this article today. This is the most shameless garbage headline I've read in a while. And again, I don't like Bernie Sanders, but I will defend anybody from this nonsense. Bernie Sanders is receiving 21 times as much positive Russian media coverage as Joe Biden. Analysis shows, please, miss me. This is ridiculous. Oh, man. Hey, you know what? Like, I want to imagine the person who reads this and goes like, I really wanted to support Bernie, but
The Russians like
Newsweek told me that 21 times as much. Like, first of all, what does that even mean? A. B. What does both of those things mean? What does positive Russian coverage mean? A. B. And also, what does it mean that Biden's getting less? Are they just not talking about Biden because they don't want to talk about him? There's so much nonsense in just this headline. I'll go through the story. The story isn't much better, but the headline itself is absolutely ridiculous. But they mentioned that Democratic presidential hopefuls Bernie Sanders received the most positive coverage of any contender from Russian state-backed news agencies, according to a new research from a foreign policy think tank. Oh my God. My God, how could this be possible? It's because, by the way, I'm not even gonna think too many steps down. Bernie Sanders did, like, you can say it's a smear or not. He did literally go to the Soviet Union and honeymoon there and say I like Russia. Like, he said the good things about the country in the past before. I'm not saying your average Russian's like, oh, I'm really happy he complimented the Soviet Union, which is the failed government state that we no longer live under. But it's just funny to me that somehow this is supposed to be like some smoking gun against Bernie. Today, for whatever reason, was the Operation End Bernie Day in the media. They take the AOC article and they run it. I agree. Kind of a weird thing. It's kind of hedging your bets. Writing articles about someone's one line they said on Seth Meyers does seem a little bit like we want to control the narrative. That's what she actually said, which it can be construed that way. And then this one, bringing up some study that found that and listen to this, 21% of Sanders' mentions were positive, compared to only 3% for Biden. 16% of Sanders' mentions were negative, compared to 40% for the former vice president. Wow. I wonder if this also has to deal with the fact that Joe Biden is very tied to a scandal going on in Ukraine. And Joe Biden, I believe, was also sent to make sure Russia didn't invade Ukraine when Russia was trying to take Crimea. Am I right? Is that what happened? I wonder why they'd have a different impression of Joe Biden, who was actively working as the vice president in their part of the world. But it's just,
well, also, why don't we just accept the fact?
Sorry, go.
I was just going to say, why don't we also just accept the fact that this whole Russian collusion, Russian influence, Russian this, Russian that was never based off of liking somebody more as much as it was just to sow division. Bernie Sanders is the underdog candidate that, if nominated, would sow the most amount of division in their enemy state, the United States of America. So, of course, they're going to support him. Probably less. I'm sure I doubt that they harbor these fantasies that he will create the communist state of America and finally the Red Army will triumph. Yeah. I doubt that's what they're liking. Yeah. They just view him as being the most controversial, the most divisive, and we want to do the most damage to the great capitalist pig in the West, the United States of America, by saying good things about him.
Do you not agree, though, that also just Joe Biden and... Now, I agree the positive coverage, whatever that means, but... And also, this is why I want to walk it back. Not walk it back, but I want to also explain to you guys how they write news headlines. I'm sure a lot of you guys know this. So the FPRI analysis took 3,897 stories and 5,082 mentions on Sputnik and RT from January 1st to March 2nd. Anything weird happened between January and March of 2019 and 2020 that involved Joe Biden in Ukraine? Like, the fact that, like, just like the narcissism that, like, these outlets owned by Russia could only be influenced by are super important. They don't have any actual politics in any other parts of the world. Nobody else has problems or issues. Joe Biden only exists in America. So any bad stuff to say about Joe, it's like, there's reasons. I mean, there's reasons why. And also, RT and Sputnik make English coverage, and they base a lot of their stuff out of America. It's not like this is like Russia's own state media in Russia is like, oh, Comrade Sanders is doing good in the polls. Like that's not what they're talking about here. You're talking about English-speaking news outlets having better things to say about Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, which, by the way, I know enough about Sputnik and RT to know that they're trying to appeal to people that are under the age of 50, which would be Joe Biden's audience. So I think part of it might be, did you ever think RT and Sputnik realized when they said good things about Bernie Sanders, they got more views? Like, I love that the only conclusion here is that our headline, they'll probably, I haven't read every word of this article, I don't want, and they'll update it after I post it anyway, but they mentioned that a little bit. But yeah, no. It can't possibly be that Bernie Sanders is more popular on the internet than Joe Biden. Yeah, it can't possibly be that. It has to be something.
And people also forget that clickbait exists in other countries too. You know what I'm saying? The yellow press and tabloids exist in other countries too. And when you look at all of the magazines on the magazine rack, even here in Southern California, for every one National Geographic and archaeology magazine or modern science magazine that's talking about something in-depth scientific that really could change the world positively, there's 15 gossip columns that are like, oh my gosh, did you hear Bernie Sanders said that like communism is good? Like, OMG, my grandpa fought communism. You know what I'm saying? There's garbage rags like that in all the other countries as well. And human behavior doesn't change too much when you cross borders. Culturally, things might get modified, but really this desire for gossip and sensationalism is not unique to Americans. So of course the amount of mentions for the old Bolshevik, the Democratic Socialist, are going to be augmented in another country for one reason or another. So misleading headline at best.
They're not talking about, as far as I understand, I know Russian Today and Sputnik, RT and Sputnik, they do stuff in English for like Americans. Like I think that's what they're talking about. I don't know if they're talking about it just says Sputnik and RT. It doesn't say that Russian or English language. And I think I'll pull up for you guys. I'll show you guys what a Sputnik Bernie Sanders article. It's just an RT article of Bernie Sanders.
Well, RT, I think all of us have seen at one point or
Not
another
a real
on
Democrat.
Facebook.
Florida lawsuit seeks to remove Bernie Sanders from primary ballot. If you read through the entire thing, it's more positive than him than negative. It actually is pretty comprehensive. It's honestly more comprehensive than a lot of other people's stuff. But they mention all stuff in here. But this is what it is. It's a regular kind of more younger focused thing. But I don't want to get too lost in this. It's not the biggest deal of all time. I just thought it was funny. You could definitely tell. And this is the last thing I want to show from today's apparent media's operation to get rid of Bernie Sanders. What is it called when it's just propaganda, right? When you put out stuff like this. Give up. You've already lost. Look, everyone else is giving up. Everyone else is, they're preparing for life after. This also came out today. So it's like, today I was just looking around, like, what are the big stories today? Oh, I guess Bernie Sanders is the worst again. Every now and then the media will do okay, today's the day.
I just think
time to put our thumb on the scales. AOC's backing off of Bernie. Young people have given up, and the Russians support him.
Before we talk about Tulsi, can I make one prediction?
Well, I want to bring up one more thing too, actually. But
okay, and then I'll make my prediction. While you're pulling that up, I really think there's nobody that can carry this really far left torch. AOC is not going to be capable of carrying it. She'll be capable of tweeting and making a stink and so on and so forth, but she's not going to be able to run a national campaign that goes beyond 1% in the way that Bernie Sanders did, or even just Barack Obama, the super left-leaning regular socialist candidates did. Before him. Socialism kind of had its day. And just because nobody ever cultivated a B team, because really you can't cultivate much of a B team with that kind of ideology, I really think post Bernie Sanders, a lot of these millennials that never really grew up, you were talking about it during the pre-show, these people that are in their early 30s now, that's kind of a cute thing. This whole underdog, swamped with student loans. I'm going to fight for student loan buybacks and universal health care. But like once you're finally 32 and you're still living in your mom's basement and you're working part-time at the coffee shop, there's just a point where you really do have to grow up and figure out that nobody else is going to fix your life for you. And I think there's just going to be this, I don't want to say a big conservative revolution, but a very rapid maturation that happens to a lot of millennials very quickly when Bernie Sanders loses, because now the hope of the way I was taught it was going to be in college and thought it was going to be during college, and this liberal utopia that I dreamed of happening for a decade that really stunted my growth. You look at where your grandparents were at 23 and where your parents were at 23, and then now where you are at 33. And you just realize, okay, this has robbed me of these 10 years. Now I have to take the reins. I believe so much in the human spirit and in the human ability to self-analyze and better their lot in life, that I think there's going to be a very large maturation in American politics once Bernie Sanders doesn't get reelected. Does that make sense?
Sure. I don't agree.
Cody, man,
sure.
how does it not? How does it not? Because who else is going to be the big socialist after Bernie's gone?
Here's the thing.
For 40 years, he was the guy.
Okay, but like, the thing is, I guess I'm not looking like who's going to be the next big socialist. I don't know, man. I think there's going to be another progressive running. Tulsi Gabbard, we're going to talk about next, is still in the race. She's probably not running again because of politics of what it's done to her. Because she's not been treated kindly by anyone. But no, I don't think there's going to be this massive like right wing wave. It's just Bernie Sanders.
No, there will always be progressives,
and he
but
didn't win. So someone else is
the strength of the movement will be completely kneecapped.
It'll just change to a different thing. That's what happens to most things. Most things start as one thing and then change to a different thing. Because that's kind of what happens to things. I mean, yes, everything changes. Think about where we were in 2012, where we are today.
I suspect a very rapid and large maturation amongst especially millennials whose growth has been matured and have failed to launch. I think they will finally start launching. So anyway, hey, let us know what you guys think. Please comment below if you haven't liked, shared, or subscribed yet. Make sure you subscribe. And if you want to join the channel, make sure you join. It's cheap. It's only $5. And it's a really great way to make sure that we can continue getting you these videos and this content free of corporate sponsorship and influence. All right. And if you can, make sure you follow us on Twitter. It's worth even just signing up for Twitter. Even if you only follow one account on Twitter, you got to follow PSP Radio 1. We send out a ton of really funny clips, really funny memes, and all kinds of other content on our Twitter feed. So make sure that you follow us on PSP Radio 1 on Twitter. This is Problem Solver Politics. We'll see you guys in the next video.